This is my official Staple Gator sketchbook right here. Wonderful people to draw it. I just got some new ones from Zach. And they get to it says, Staple Gator, no. He's developed a taste for paper flesh. Yeah. Jason, it says, hi, son, as you might expect it to say. And, where'd it go? That one from Julia. It's a very classy, your average Staple exhibitor. Fancy glass of wine. It's too bloodshot, but we put it in a nice glass. Thank you.
You have to find, yeah, I'll do one.
You know, you've never had me draw a Staple Gator. It's almost like I'm a writer and not an artist.
I'll let you write a short story.
I should do that, yeah, exactly.
Give it more. Thank you guys. Enjoy.
Staple Gator should be a new cryptid. All right, well, with that, it is a few seconds till time, so we can go ahead and take it. Welcome to the Staple Independent Media Expo. Thank you very much. This is, I think they've been doing this like 20 years now, something like that. They skipped a few years in the middle.
17th show, 20 years.
I can't remember why they skipped a few years in the middle. There's something
weird.
Something came up. But anyway, that might be it, yes. So once again, my name is Kevin Garcia. I am not a webcomic creator, although I aspire to be one. And we're going to be talking to these webcomic creators.
Aspire higher.
Honestly, though, like, okay, I love comics, and you guys can share the mic too. I love comics, and I work in them and I read them, but I'm also a high school teacher, and I tell you, every one of my students reads webtoons. And so I think aspiring to webcomics makes sense. All right. With that, let's get started. So I want to introduce, Julia, could you introduce yourself first? How long have, I'll let you guys get settled. So Julia, how long have you been making comics, and what got you started?
Hello. Is it?
Yes.
Is this going? All right, cool. My name is Julia Kay. I've been making comics since maybe 2013. Started out as an absurdist gag comic artist for about 4 years or so. Made a number of hundreds of those, and then I started dealing with gender, and I didn't have anybody to talk to about what I was going through, and so I started processing everything I was going through the medium of comics, because that made sense to me at the time, just screaming into my sketchbook. And when I started working at Disney, I stopped having time to make the gag comics I'd been known for, and nervously started sliding those autobiographical comics about my transition online, and it was very well received. A lot of people felt seen in ways that weren't really spoken about at the time. This was like back in like 2016, and the project kind of blew up, and then it kind of started me down the trajectory of making autobiographical comics ever since. So I've been doing it for like, I don't know, near on over a decade now, 12 years. Yeah.
You know, a lot of times I see artists, and I love going through the webcomics and seeing their art grow with them. I feel like you've grown with your art, because you've changed a lot as you've gone through the
Oh, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely,
So,
yeah. It's been a really cool adventure. Yeah, not staying stagnant.
All right, and we have Jason Poland. Jason, could you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Jason Poland. I draw My Dad is Dracula, and I've been drawing comics since 2003. And oh, you found, yeah, those are my old comics, Robbie and Bobby. So I got my start in my college newspaper, and then I started drawing on the web, where you can do anything with a webcomic. And so I did that for a really long time, and honestly, like, I did get, suffered a little burnout, and so I started to remember why I loved comics in the first place, which brought me to why I draw My Dad is Dracula now. It was like, it's a very simple formula, 3 panels, but I thought it would be really funny if it's the same thing in every single comic. It was a Dracula says, hi son, to his son, and he's something different every single time. And a lot of people ask, why is he Dracula? I say, hi son, I don't know.
So, as you were doing like the longer gags and you went to the shorter ones, do you feel like it's more liberating being able to do the simple format, or do you feel like it's, now that you've done it, you feel constrained by it at all?
Not at all. Like, I feel like because of the constraint, it really forces me to sort of explore, like, what can I do in this comic? Because what I'll do is I might explore like a topic. Like one time I did My Dad is Dracula and a funicular car. So you know these trains that go up mountains, and so like I did a deep dive on Wikipedia, and so the song Funicula, that Italian song. So I was like I'm gonna make a joke about that, the super deep cut that maybe like 2 people will get, and I just enjoyed that tremendously, and so I think that resonates with people too. And so it's one comic. Tomorrow it's gonna be something different. I don't have to like write my whole career on one comic, so. Quantity over quality, I say.
It's those super deep cuts that I live for. It's one thing I told you to teach high school and tell my students, look, if nobody gets it but it still makes sense, you're doing great. But that one person who got that deep cut, they're going to feel so proud of themselves. So let's go in to Zach Cranor. Zach, tell us about you. How long have you been doing comics? How'd you get started?
I'm Zach Cranor, and I do Last Place Comics, as seen here, and I've been doing Last Place Comics on and off for a very long time. I started it when I was in college for my college newspaper also, and it was a strict 4-panel strip in colorless, and I did that for a while, but this was before social media kind of existed. It was just MySpace, and there weren't any huge comics except for those that had big websites like Cyanide and Happiness and that ilk. And so I kind of just posted on DeviantArt in obscurity for like 9 years and to my 2,000 followers. And then eventually I was like, I don't need to spend every weekend doing this. So I went on hiatus for about 7 years and came back and started again now that, Instagram and stuff exists. And that made it, that helped me a little bit. So yeah, I do these gag-a-day, absurdity-focused, and they started out pretty short, but they've been growing longer, and I've been trying to tell more intricate stories, often across multiple strips now. So that's me.
Oh, actually, let me borrow that one for a second. Flip that around. So I saw, just doing a quick search, a lot of this stuff, because I'd seen your stuff before on Instagram, but when I always like to see what pops up first in the search, and your first searches are often pandemic-related stuff. Why do you think people connect with that stuff?
I don't know. I mean, that's when I first started, and I think I paid more attention to search engine optimization when I first started, and now I just, have a really pithy, sarcastic description in every comic I have, so that might be why when you search Last Place Comics, it's all stuff from like when I first started redoing comics. But I mean, there maybe was a boost in that everybody was stuck in their house. And
I don't really remember that very, very well. All right, well, thank you very much. Let's pass that back down. All right.
Oh, there.
Mad Rupert. I say Mad.
Yeah.
So Mad Rupert, how did you? It's funny to say your whole name now. It flows off like that.
It's yeah. Mad Rupert is easier than Madeline Rupert Jasper.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Mad, how did you get started in comics, and what was that journey like?
So I got started in comics. I decided to go to the Savannah College of Art and Design in Savannah, Georgia, in the year 2008. And while I was there, I started my
What's up, Harper?
sequential art.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Oh, when were you there?
I switched to illustration, like a year before.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Comics were in the toilet, and like everybody was like, get out, you're moving in a hut.
Well, I was getting in. Oh wait. I thought I went through a whole period where I was like, I want to be a creative writer, I want to be an illustrator, I want to be in animation, I want to be in video games. And then I realized I could take two of those things, writing and art, and go into comics. So I started my first webcomic, Sakana, which is about a bunch of people that work at a fish market, in the Tsukiji fish market in Tokyo. I started that in 2010. It's still going. It goes on hiatus all the time, but it is an ongoing story that's strip format, which is the worst decision I ever made in my life, was to make it strip format, because now it's all optimized for scroll format, so it's like the bane of my existence. Yeah, and so beyond that, I've made other webcomics, I've done licensed comics, I've done graphic novels and everything, I've done all kinds of comics, but webcomics, still my favorite, it's my baby, it's the thing that I love to do the most, so that's what I like to do.
All right. Let's try it either way. Well, you mentioned you do licensed comics, graphic novels, and those things. When people think of webcomics, a lot of times it's very self-directed. When it's licensed, you clearly have some expectations. How different are those two fields for you?
Extremely different, because I can draw my little men doing anything that I want in any way that I want, and then I have to go and draw Adventure Time, a regular show, in style, in voice, as fast as humanly possible for years. And that sort of, makes you feel a certain way, which is bad. And then you go back to webcomics and you're like, oh my God, my babies, they're still here. My little men, I can get them all back out and set them all up again and do this at my pace, in my own way. And it was definitely a breath of fresh air at that point in my life.
Now, thank you very much. With that, if anybody has any questions, we can go to you real quick. Otherwise, talk to these guys some more. All right, if you do have a question, pop up a hand. I'll get to you as soon as possible. So I guess the first thing people usually ask is, how can I start my own? So for everyone here, I guess, how should somebody start their own webcomic?
Well, first you need to find the perfect pen. No, you don't.
Honestly, it's not.
Hashtag not sponsored.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, actually, Julia, you want to go? That was just a joke. But.
I don't know what the answer is. I mean, just...
I suggest, if you want to talk, you can go.
I mean, I was going.
That's all right, go ahead. Please. Okay, what I suggest you do is go to any webcomic that's been popular and go to like their first one and look at how awful it is. And so that's your indication that you don't need to have everything figured out to start a webcomic. Like, that's kind of the benefit of being small, is that you can experiment and figure out what works, and the stakes are really low. And then, you get to figure out what people respond to and what you're best at, and you don't have to worry about having a flop because you're posting for 100 people. So you don't need much to start a webcomic. You just need mainly it's the will to start a webcomic.
Mm-hmm. I feel like what makes webcomics so great is there's no bar to entry. When I first started, I didn't understand the world of publishing comics. I didn't understand how that worked in the least. And webcomics ran the gamut of various visual styles and skill levels. And it made me just become hyper aware that it doesn't matter what it looks like, so long as you're connecting with your audience. And quite frankly, when you're starting out, there's no pressure, aside from what you're putting on yourself. I mean, that goes in general, but you're not gonna have any followers, aside from maybe your friends who are gonna support you anyway. It's gonna take time to find that audience anyway. Yeah, just pushing through anxieties, and just making things regardless has been huge.
Okay. I think for me specifically, I think all of my comics are like ongoing stories. They're like not gag or episodic or anything like that. So my advice, I guess, for my own type of webcomics is find an idea about some guys that you love and who live in your head that like you just have to get out there so bad, and no publisher is ever going to want these, but you have to want it so bad that you're like, I'm going to take all of my time, all of my energy, and pour into this thing that, let's be honest, is mostly for you, and will probably mostly be for you for like the majority of the comic's life. But that also means that you can put it away yourself when you need to, and bring it back out when you need to. And you know, a lot of times, like especially I think the publishing world goes through cycles where publishers want specific things, and if you're not really willing to tell a story that's specifically what they want at that moment, you kind of have to, you know, make a decision. Is like, do I want to take this on myself and like make it myself, and then that, you know, could be a webcomic.
Yeah, this is all exactly the right advice. Like, I think there's this illusion that you see something you admire and you think that there was a series of deliberate choices that made it, when in fact that's usually the furthest thing from the truth. Like, I love reading about like a movie production and finding out like what like insane, awful things happen behind the scenes, and like, well, this person was sick that day, so we ended up going with this actor, and so it feels like there was this canon that was derived, you know, eons ago, but really it was like, we all just showed up and you made a movie, so just show up and make a webcomic, you know. And so I like to think, you know, I think having little men is very helpful, you know, people.
Gotta have little men.
Yeah, they're just people you want to visit with, and like, you know, with My Dad is Dracula, I walk around and I'm like, okay, I need an idea for a comic. Oh, My Dad is Dracula in a water bottle, here we go. And so, just like, again, the bar is beneath the ground sometimes. And so, just, I was talking to Matt Brock, another artist here, about lower the bar for entry for yourself, for like, you know, it's hard enough to make things with everything else going on in the world. Like, don't make it harder for yourself. The internet is not a massive amphitheater that you're performing in. It's like, it starts off as like a little coffee shop or whatever, you know, you're just there and it's open mic, whatever, you know. So they're just happy that you're showing up, honestly. And so if you miss a day, it doesn't matter. Don't put any extra pressure on yourself. So.
I mean, to springboard off of what you said earlier about movies and whatnot, it's just a miracle that anything creative gets made. And if you can complete a page of a comic, incredible. And also, I will say against that advice, I mean, to provide another angle, I guess. I actually found it to be counterpoint. I found it to actually be really helpful to set a schedule for myself, to put personal deadlines, to say I'm going to make 2 comics a week. It doesn't matter how good or bad, in my own opinion, they are, but I'm just going to set myself to do this task. And I actually found that to be super helpful to getting myself to do it, not waiting for inspiration to strike like lightning.
Like I said earlier, I'm not a webcomic creator, but that is essential for me as well. If I don't have some kind of a schedule, it's just not going to happen. Mm-hmm. I also, Zach, really like the idea that you go back and look at other people's work from the beginning. There's so many webcomics that I like, and I'll go back to the very first one and just watch their art evolve. It's just, it's inspirational. Julia, earlier you were talking about, you know, not necessarily popular yet, but you need to get more popular. Is there, not need to, but you can. Is there anything that you think helps in terms of reaching that audience?
Could you rephrase that?
So, like, if you're making a comic and you're starting off, you know, just doing it for yourself, but eventually people find it. You said they kind of see themselves in the comic, that kind of thing. What do you think helps get it out there? Is it like, are there sites where you post it that's better? Is it you have to promote it? What would you do?
I have no idea. I mean, like, no, it's really rough as far as social media goes. Every social media platform goes through a golden period where like there is no algorithm because they're being funded by VC money, and then like that dries up and they need to start bringing it for ad revenue as best as they can. Like, it was super easy to get organic growth on like Instagram, say, back around 2018, and it's only gotten abysmal. I mean, it's possible to break through that organically with short form comics in particular, and for characters and stories that people really love. But it's really challenging. I personally, back in the day, found most of my audience through posting to specific subreddits and doing my best to try and funnel those people to other places, which had a very small rate of success, but it was enough to start the ball rolling at the very least. But yeah, I genuinely don't really know what else exists nowadays, if that's changed. I mean, people still use Reddit, I guess, but it seems ancient at this point. But yeah, I haven't been super focused on like watching number go up for a long time.
Fair enough. And Zach, you mentioned like some of your earlier stuff wasn't necessarily labeled, and now you label them more and that kind of things. What have you?
No, the other way around.
Oh well. Tell me about that. How did that work?
Well, I mean, when I first started out, I joined a bunch of webcomic chats, and everybody has their theories about how the algorithm was working. This was like 2020, and this was in that period of like Julia said, like 2018, everyone was rising. Then 2020, that's when everybody started sinking. So everybody had these theories as to what you need to do to like increase engagement. So, you know, I was following that. I don't believe any of them now. I think it's mainly just like hashtags and stuff like that don't really do anything. Like you'll be matched up organically with related content. You don't need to add like 100 hashtags. Oh, sorry.
Tell them we said hi.
So yeah, that's why I used to try like the gimmicks more back then, and now I just kind of post and whatever happens happens. Because when you get a viral post, like you can't really plan for that, you know, just kind of happens.
And then, Jason, kind of similar question. You know, you got, My Dad is Dracula, which has got its own self-created niche, which works out really well. How do you find an audience?
If you intentionally put typos in your work, people...
Bound to make engagement.
Yes. So actually, can you go to the comic you have? So also, this one's a perfect example. So My Dad is Dracula in a Hall of Mirrors. So this one blew up on Reddit because there was a big argument about Draculas, or vampires, if you call them.
Whatever you're going to say, that's the very first thing that popped in my mind when I saw this.
Yeah? Okay, yeah. Why is he reflecting in a mirror? Okay. I one of the things I love, this is some insider stuff right here I'm about to share with you. I don't care about vampire lore. I mean, and I know all about it as a person. I love Dracula's. But in the comic, I don't do jokes about garlic. I ignore all the tropes, and that baffles people. But they latched onto this and argued. The big argument was like, okay, it's mirrors that have silver. And so then it went back and forth. Because it was on Reddit, everyone loves to argue there. So like when you see this comic and it's like 100-something comments, they're like, I gotta click on this post. And then the comic, it's funny, like the quality, I don't know what it is. It's like, it's just as good as it is every day, but then when a bunch of more people look at it, it doesn't mean it's better. It's just like a bunch more people looked at it. And so they liked it, and I got some readers, and all because of some arguments in the comments.
I'm not gonna lie, that exact same thing popped in my head. And I also thought about the silver. So Mad, same question before we go to the audience question. How can people try to find an audience? Is that a thing people can plan for?
I think that planning for it is a way to sort of drive yourself crazy, is like sort of trying to really specifically manufacture the audience. Like, I need this many people, this many eyes by this point, or else I'm not succeeding. Like sort of setting those hard metrics for yourself, I think, is a recipe for burnout and for disaster. I think for me specifically, it's been a very slow roll, an extremely slow roll over the last decade and a half. Of like, I was at every single like major social media platform. I started posting it page by page on DeviantArt, where I was also involved in original character tournaments, or OCTs, if anyone is that old and was on DeviantArt at that time.
Did your little man win?
No. No, my little men did not win because I would always sign up for them and then not have enough time to finish my entries. But from that sort of group, so it was basically like all artists like my own age, which was like, you know, maybe like, I was maybe like 18 at the time, 17. Everybody sort of had, you know, their little group on DeviantArt. We all started reading each other's comics. I was posting on DeviantArt for a really long time. DeviantArt sort of waned. I was on Smack Jeeves, which was a webcomics platform. And then I was on something called Dap Show or something for a minute. And then I was on Ink Blazers for a minute. And now I'm on Hiveworks. And then I was on Tumblr, and then I was on Twitter, which was my main platform. And my other webcomic, which is for adults, so I'm not going to talk about that so much here, that got like, you know, buku viewers.
Do your own research on that one.
Yeah, do your own research on that one. But I had to like leave it all behind because now Twitter's like, I'm like, I have to get out of this place and like start over again on Blue Sky. So, but through all of those jumps, I'm sort of like slowly accumulating like more and more and more people, and it really is just like white knuckling the whole time. Like, I'm gonna stick this out. I'm gonna make these comics, and y'all have to come with me.
So if I'm understanding correctly from everybody here, the key to getting a good, strong followership, thank you, couldn't get the word out, is throw everything at the wall and just see what works.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And stick around.
Oh, that too.
Keep going.
Minor note, like I found like personally, like when I first started, I was making just one-off absurdist gag strips, and like I had a lot bigger numbers back then, but like I found that like I didn't really tap into having like a passionate fan base until I made something that people more emotionally connected with, and I started to shift my own understanding and focus onto just having a smaller fan base that's passionate about what I do, and I've found that to be so much more worthwhile. I mean, it's great if you can have both, I guess, but you know, you just want people that are just ride or die for your work. You know, you want to connect with people. Yeah.
I call this the 10 sickos problem. So it's like you can make as many people, you can get as many people to look at your comic as possible, but you will always have 10 sickos who love you and they love what you're doing and they'll follow you anywhere you go. And once you've reached the number 10, you've made it. 10 full sickos.
The new metric. All right, we have a question here.
It was less of a question, more of like a possible suggestion. There's a website that I read webcomics on that's like dedicated to webcomics. It's called Comic Fury.
Comic Theory?
Yeah. So
Comic Fury.
Fury.
Yeah, possible platform that's like dedicated to making webcomics.
It's like Newsmack Jeeves.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
That was it.
Oh, I was going to say, you mentioned Smack Jeeves earlier and Hiveworks, and then Comic Fury is one I need to look up because I wasn't aware of that one. And I mentioned earlier, pretty much all of my students read Webtoon or Tapas or something like it. Have any of you guys, well, I know you have because you talked about it.
Do they still use Tapas? Is that still around?
It is still around.
Tapas is still around.
Yeah.
They may not have they don't have that Korea money, but they're,
Yeah, no, after Webtoon started taking over.
They got a couple.
But my point is that I know you said, say what?
I said you can post normal comic pages.
Yes, traditional comic pages are hard on Webtoon, which a lot of people I've known, they tried it and got off because they couldn't get it to work. But what I was going to ask is then, like I said, you worked with others. Have the rest of you thought about working with either a site like that, a group like that, or even a app like Webtoon?
I mean, I was on Webtoon's payroll for a couple years, I guess, and that was great. But I didn't particularly love the format of slicing up my work, because
Okay.
just, yeah, I formatting issues.
Honestly, that's what other artists have said. It wasn't so much that it wasn't lucrative or it didn't work, it was just that it is uncomfortable, not what they're used to.
Yeah, no, I find the work that I made exclusively for Webtoon at that time just was stilted. It wasn't my best work, and for whatever reason, the format change just, I don't know, messed with me.
How about you guys? Have you thought about using any other services, apps, or groups in order to promote your stuff?
I could think all day about that, but I do have some stuff on Go Comics, which is like a more traditional newspaper style. Like a lot of the like more syndicated comics are on there as well, because I think kind of my roots come from newspaper comics. So, but I honestly, again, like I don't think that's where the best audience is. So yeah, I feel like it's. You gotta kind of meet the audience where they are, where you want them to be. Again, spaghetti on the wall, but yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much what he said. Like Webtoons is a very specific type of audience. They're not interested in what I'm selling. So I do post there just because I have some people there that like me. But like,
You need more romance in your comics.
Yeah, more romance, more sparkles.
You need something to reincarnate into a new world, and now they're leveling up and they're super smart.
I was gonna say
I'm writing all this down.
You have people of a certain age on your panel here. We're all of a certain age, and I think that all of us, if all of us were 10 to 15,
25?
yeah, yes, 25, yeah. I think if we were maybe 18 or to 25, somewhere around that age, I think you would probably have more of a understanding and appreciation for Webtoons, but we're all old here. Except for James, except for Julie.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But the good thing is, it's like it doesn't cost you anything to post, so you could just try it out and see where you catch on. Try it out and see what happens.
Oh, I do. I'll say one last thing. I guess the one thing about those sites that is good is like it can by setting a schedule for creating, you can also set a schedule for posting because the people expect your comics to be at a certain time, and those places are great to create that structure because they also recommend like twice a week or whatever. So it's a good framework to create for yourself because I may not be drawing comics in my college newspaper or whatever, but it forced me to come up with something every single day, because I had to go to work.
Your question?
Since we're on the subject of tapas and Webtoon specifically, something like the comment on the age of the creators is like that's pretty keen just because the mere fact that so many of you started on DeviantArt is like, okay, this is from the previous generation of comic creators I see. No, but something that I always found really interesting is that anybody that's getting into making comics has probably picked up 2 of Scott McCloud's 3 books, Making Comics and Understanding Comics. There's one middle one, though, that hasn't gotten nearly as much press these days, Reinventing Comics. Now, in that one, Scott McCloud was trying to theorize, well, what do comics look like now that the main thing to read them on is going to be a computer screen? Phones weren't small enough to do that back then, but he suggested what if you get comics that just sort of flow endlessly, and he created these weird little comics that look like flow charts, and what if, since you're no longer bound to buying a single book, what if you pay a small amount of money per page, kind of a thing, and at the time that was not well received. One of the 2 creators of Penny Arcade, which is now like the massivist webcomic, they're like their own company,
They have their own expos.
They have their own convention, they're like basically a gaming media, like a gaming news media site now, called that idea dangerous. But now you've got Webtoon, you've got Tapas, you've got Comic Key, various platforms that are built to scroll on phones and computer screens, and some of them, their more premium entries, will have you pay per page or per entry. What do you all think of that as being like sort of like the previous, like more like your work is much more like akin to classic newspaper strip gag a day or traditional, drawn on 11 by 17 Bristol type of comics?
So what do you, it's got a couple questions out of that, but in a basic sense, what do you think about your comics as DLC? No, the idea of, no, but seriously though, on Webtoon they have subscriptions. They also have where they can pay to get an early read of it, that kind of thing. Is this something that any of you have thought about doing?
I don't like it because I have already worked in licensed comics in what more or less like a extreme time crunch, extreme pressure to like push out as many pages as fast as humanly possible. We're talking 22 pages a week, every other week sort of thing. You know, actually, they're pretty good. I do a lot of stretches, but yeah. And this was at an earlier point in my life, fortunately. But I don't think I could hit that pace today. But going through that experience and now knowing that sort of like it's the new way to squeeze as much content out of younger people as you can, you know, humanly do, and update these, you know, endless scroll. I read that whole Scott McCloud, like, oh, what if it's endless scroll? And everybody was like, Scott McCloud, you're crazy. He was right. No, I've already been through that, and I think that they're trying to make it again, and I don't really appreciate it.
I mean, like, I feel like it just changes the dynamic. You know, it's less like one person's effort, and it's more in the vein of making manga, where you have assistants and whatever.
Yeah.
And that's fine, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, that brings up another point. You mentioned Scott McCloud, his books. I want to ask you all: are there either it could be other comics that have inspired you, or books that you like? Oh, this was instrumental in me coming up with my plan of attack, or anything that you would recommend? Or like, this is what inspired me. You should go check it out.
Oh, well, if anyone's read Webcomic Name, is that? Yeah, so Alex Norris, right? Okay, so definitely a big inspiration for My Dad's Dracula. Like, I'm just gonna do literally the same, you know, I think in Oh No Comics is another name it's known by. But yeah, same, expecting, you have come to expect something every single day. And then there was Hop Dude, yes, Mamma Mia, every single panel, you know, 3-panel. Those were just like, okay, this is why I love comics. Comics can be ridiculous, comics can be short. Nancy comics from like the 50s. What's it called? Oh, wow, okay, yes.
It got a reboot.
Yep.
Not that long
Yes.
ago.
This is the right crowd for Nancy. Also, Little Lulu.
Yeah. And so like there's literally an old school Nancy comic, like anything can happen in a comic strip. And I think Scott McCloud has a game called 5-Card Nancy where you take panels from Nancy comics that are completely cut up and dissected from their original context, and you make new comics out of them. So I just love that like that is, comics can be dynamic, modular, portable. But yeah, just anything that you love, you can make it. And I think as far as the subscription model thing goes, I like Patreon because it's like, it reminds me of when I used to have a website, and it's like, website for, you know, I go to there and read the comics. So I can like, I post there and I can bring people there and create like an experience for them instead of like having to cater to like a publisher's formula or anything.
We're talking about influences now. So for me, the biggest one was Perry Bible Fellowship, which is like, I mean, every cartoonist is going to say, well, especially our age, is going to say Calvin and Hobbes first.
I was going to say that.
But then after that, for me, my other like foundational, like this is what comics should be, in my opinion, is like Perry Bible Fellowship. And it's like, I don't think I've reached that point because, you know, his is so like trimmed down and like everything's in 4 panels, and like he tells this whole story in 4 panels. That I require a lot more than that, but to me that's like my foundational influence.
I mean, I wouldn't say any newspaper comic in general. I was just really inspired by them. Just the being able to read a comic on a daily basis, check in on characters, see what they're up to. I mean, even as a child, I understood that like most of them were really mediocre and not living up to the potential of the medium. But I would read like everything I could get on a day-to-day basis. But webcomics are really what made making my own comic seem doable. And back when I was doing gag comics, it seemed, I mean, myself and everybody at the time really wanted to be Casey Green with Gun Show. My autobio stuff was really inspired by reading Erica Moen's Dar, and Johnny Wander by Yugo and Ananth was killer. And yeah, a few other autobio stuff. Oh.
Yes, Calvin and Hobbes, but that was probably like, you know, that was like, I was maybe like 6 or something reading Calvin and Hobbes being like, I could do this. But I think what really solidified it for me was in high school, I finally had access to the internet. And I found KeenSpot, which is proto like Smack Jeeves. Like first it was KeenSpot, then it was Smack Jeeves, now it's Comic Fury. But it was people making their own comics and uploading them page by page. And that was the very first time I had ever sort of encountered the idea that like you don't need a publisher. You could just make your own comic, upload it at whatever speed you want, and put it on the internet, and other people will read it. And in fact, one of my favorite comics on KeenSpot was RPG World, which was made by Ian Jones Quarterly, who went on to make OK Go and Steven Universe and stuff like that, or work on Steven Universe. Yeah, it was like me, 14 years old, on my like on the computer at school, like reading RPG World, like page by page by page. And there was a small publisher at the time. I don't really like to talk about this because the name of it was so bad.
But they existed.
But they existed. It was a small-time publisher that existed and would publish people's original comics as like floppies. So like you could go to the store and get all kinds of like basically web comics, but they were like printed in 22-page issues. And you could go to the comic book store and get them. And I thought that was just the most incredible thing ever. It was like, this isn't Batman, this isn't Spider-Man, this is some weird person making some weird story, and I'm a weird person, and I could make a weird story and publish it too. So those were like the first two.
How bad was the name?
Very bad.
I don't really want to say.
Before I get to the next question, I was going to throw out a couple more real quick. I love that you guys are saying that, you know, Calvin Hobbes kind of inspired our generation, and what I think is neat is that generation was inspired by a comic called Pogo. So whenever you meet people who are creators in the 70s and 80s, they're like, I grew up on Pogo. That was what inspired me. And in terms of webcomics, I find the one that's currently called Dumbing of Age from the Walkieverse. He does a really amazing, like every single panel has a purpose, and it works really well with that. And then also Gunner Creek Court and Questionable Content, both of those evolved from being, you know, decent to really well thought out, planned out pages. So I love seeing that. Okay, got a question here?
What's y'all's like daily kind of time management or like goal for your comics?
What is the day in the life of a webcomic creator? You were talking earlier about having a schedule and stuff. How would we do that?
Well, actually, I feel extremely fortunate that my wife has a 9-to-5. So I get up with her, and we work back to back because we both work from home. So we basically just keep the same hours. So I'm kind of forced into this like typical 9-to-5 with I actually work as a concept artist right now, so I'm not full-time in comics. But so it's an easy, like, we get up at like 8 and then work until like 2, which is when her lunch is, and then stop for lunch, and then we get back on until like 6, and then you know, we go to the gym or whatever. We do have a very like prototypical life.
I am jealous of how organized that is. Okay.
Honestly, I don't do comics full-time currently. I haven't for a number of years because I was in the animation industry for a long time. Not currently, but as it goes, it's kind of folded in on itself. But currently, I restarted my a Patreon to make daily comics, much in the vein of my books. And after talking to a friend of mine, Danielle Corsetto, who's been doing that for a while now for her own Patreon. Yeah, she's so sweet. I love her so much. Yeah, I spend an hour a day on it. I set aside my phone. I'm trying to do it first thing in the morning before I do anything else, and just focus on the one thing, kick it out the door as fast as I can, and move on with my day. If I make any other comics that are like more labor intensive, great. If not,
Okay, so I mentioned burnout when I was doing Robbie and Bobby.
what's that?
And so my schedule, when I was drawing Robbie and Bobby, because I had a full-time job, I'd wake up at 5, and then I'd draw the comic, and then I would go to work. And then sometimes that would bleed into drawing the comic on my lunch break. And then as I started drawing more and more elaborate comics and more long forms, I started getting up at 4, and it just wasn't healthy. So that led to burnout, so don't do that. But with My Dad is Dracula, I kind of have a basically if I can draw a comic in 20 minutes, I'm gonna be happy. And so I try to break that down into like the smallest steps. Like I just do, what is the topic? My Dad is Dracula and so I just fill out a blank, one side of a page with like whatever comes to mind, and I set a timer for like 5 minutes and like however many I can come up with in 5 minutes. And then the next day I'll, it's like staging a garden or something. And so like the next day I pick one of these ideas and I just sketch it out. And then I set another timer. And so like it's very time based. And then so like whatever I get at the end, I'm generally happy with. And by the time I get to the drawing phase, it's almost like I don't really have to think anymore because it's been so planned out and sketched. I'm basically tracing my own work at that point. So it's like, hey, past Jason, thanks for setting this up for me. and then I got it, and I'm usually pretty happy about that.
Yeah, mine's pretty similar to Jason, where it's kind of split up among different days. Mainly like with the ideation process, it's kind of like just keeping your mind open to something being a comic and having that in the back of your head. So throughout the week, I'll be thinking, could that be a comic? Could that be a comic? So that hopefully when the day to draw the comic comes, I don't have to actually brainstorm or think about it. I already have the idea that I'm gonna do set up. And then I'll spend the day penciling it, and then I'll try and have the pencils done so I can come the next day and look at it with kind of fresh eyes and see if I need to tweak anything. And so then the next day I'll do the inks and the colors, and it takes me a lot longer than 20 minutes. But yeah, that's my process. I like to give myself like space between so I can reevaluate, because I like to reevaluate and revise a lot.
Got a question over here?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Me? Okay. Hi there. So I've been working on my first graphic novel off and on for about a year or two, about like halfway through.
I know that feeling.
First thing, yeah. And one thing I'm kind of struggling with is I have really high expectations of what it should be, and then the reality of like my limitations, right? So I was kind of wondering how y'all strike a balance between like, maybe your own expectations of your work versus like your own limitations, whether it's like time or health or skill level or whatever.
How do we deal with the desire to be perfect, to the perfectionist that we need to get? Because it's very hard to meet our own standards. I know that feeling a lot. That's why I don't draw my own comics.
Finished is always better than perfect.
Yeah. So I'm going to add a
Doesn't
caveat.
exist.
The 20 minutes I mentioned was not how much like every comic takes, but the minimal that I set per day. So I'm like, as long as I did 20 minutes worth of creative work, I can feel happy. So, and it creates a habit. So then you don't feel like happy until you've done something, drawn something. So as long as you're sticking to it, you're going to make continual progress. So I just figured 20 minutes was it's like about as much as a Frasier episode. So.
Yeah, I think I have sort of in my mind, every new project that I'm doing is like a major escalation from the last thing, and so I'll like set myself these challenges, like I'll commit to, this book is going to be 100 pages but full colored, and I've never full colored a comic before, and so it will take me like 5 years to make 100 pages, but they're exacting to my standards, and for a long time I would do that to myself, like over and over again, get really delayed on everything. And then these days I'm just like, okay, so it's no longer my full-time job, but I want this to be out there, and I want people to see the comics that I'm making, and they think about it so much less than I do. Nobody is gonna, you know, see that this person's hand is like drawn a little wonky, or like maybe the bookshelf in the background doesn't always have the same sort of arrangement of books or whatever. There are like all these little things that I'm thinking about like obsessively in every single panel that nobody will ever see and ever think about even once. And you have to assume that they're gonna look at every single panel that you make in like a microsecond, even if it took you like all day to make it, or like, you know, years of your life. So you just have to sort of, yeah, perfect is the enemy of done. And so if you want it to be done, you really just sort of have to give up, you know, some of the control that you want to have over it in order to eventually, you know, be happy that you finished something. I think that should probably be the primary goal.
Absolutely. One quick thing. I just wanted to jump in to say, definitely agree on that part. And like the only way to get better at something is to do the thing.
Yeah.
And just know that it's not the last thing you make. The first thing that you make is not going to be your magnum opus. Don't view it that way. That's gonna just that's gonna drive you insane. And I would also just point out that like a really popular manga that came out was called One Punch Man, and
Yes.
and he was I mean there was charm to his drawings, but like it's like what mattered was the story resonated with people, regardless. It doesn't matter what it looks like so long as it's telling the story that you're trying to tell effectively.
For me, it also helped to look at how other cartoonists stylize things, and like if you can heavily stylize it, it doesn't need to be as perfect, and that can go a long way towards like speeding up your process. Is looking like you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can look at how other cartoonists like will stylize something very complex and turn it into something that you can easily draw.
Wait, can I just do one final thought on this? And this is only because I'm working in concept right now. If you have a computer that's powerful enough to run Unreal Engine, it's free, and you can go on the Unreal Marketplace and download models, 3D models of anything you could ever possibly imagine, anything. Incredible. You can like set up your own little house. You can set up your own little like Victorian mansion, your own little sci-fi corridor, anything. You don't have to know how to model at all. And then you can rotate around it with a camera and then take screen caps and then put that on your panel and then trace over top of that, because you've done work. You've done the work. It's not wrong to trace your own 3D models.
I was just quoting earlier one of the biggest artists in comics, one of the most important comics, I think he's looked back, in the 1950s, was named Wally Wood. And he famously said, don't draw what you can copy, don't copy what you can trace, and don't trace what you can paste up.
Absolutely.
But no, it's not. There's nothing wrong with that, because it's like using photo reference. You are literally just making the photo reference, and it works really well.
Making your own photo reference, and then you have it forever, and you can like spin around that 3D model for years.
Or just embrace things being really
Or,
wonky,
yeah,
because fuck AI.
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
we want to see. Let's go.
I was trying not to. Yes, exactly. Go ahead.
Sorry for the wording, but so there's original comics, but there's also fan-made comics like fanzines and fan art online. What do you think of that? Do you think it's like similar to original comics, or do you think it has a separate place on its own?
So how do you feel about fan works, fan arts, fanzines, especially fan comics?
I think that is the perfect way to get a following for your own work, is draw the things that you like, that other people are already familiar with, and then you pull them all in like a fly trap. And then you're like, hey, but if you liked that, you'll also like my original thing. that I make that is like this thing that we both like, so you'll stick around, right? And then they become one of your 10 sickos.
And when you're doing that, after you've trapped them all, then just continue to make fan work, but just change their designs and their names, and suddenly you're doing the exact same thing, but it's all your own work.
And they're stuck.
Yeah.
They're trapped.
They're trapped.
Oh, I think fanzines are a blast. I used to put together like once a year. Are you in Shaq scene, Julia?
Yeah, that was great.
Okay, so I was like, hey, everybody loves Shaq, right? I'm gonna have a project where everybody sends drawings or stories or poems about Shaquille O'Neal, and so it was great. Everybody sent in stuff, and we printed it. Everybody got a copy, and it was just a great way to meet other artists and like hey, let's forget all the struggles we have with our personal work and celebrate the big man. And then we did another one called a blank Hill zine, where you would get Hank Hill's face and draw it on whatever draw the rest of it. Like it could be like Hank Hill is the Berlin Wall. I don't know, whatever. And then there was drawing Fraser Crane from memory. So that was another one.
That would be very difficult.
Yeah, right? So, but I don't know, you just create like a gravity well fandom and see who comes to it,
Yeah, I think it's like, it's cool because people don't have to like relearn characters, so you kind of have an in like of accessibility. And for gag-a-day stuff, it's like a cheat code. Like if you get in with that fan base with like a gag, then that thing can like rocket to the moon. Like if you do the right Junji Ito comic, it will like carry to the ends of the earth.
To Junji himself.
Yes.
I will say, one thing I always tell people is, you get that really good idea and you're having fun with it and you're really building your skills. Now scratch off those serial numbers and make your own comic, like you do. Like literally, I have a superhero comic right now that has a super strong guy in a cape, a really big guy that doesn't wear a shirt and has torn pants. You get the idea. But we only have time for a couple more questions. We're gonna do it real quick. Question here?
Yeah, you said finished is better than perfect.
Well, hold on. I have to.
Oh, I'm
sorry.
Okay, sorry. Actually, I'm gonna stand. No, I was gonna say I wanted to provide like another perspective too, a follow-up question to it. So I'm 26. I'm a millennial. So I grew up reading physical stuff. Like I went through my cousin's like shoujo beat and stuff like that. I read a lot of manga growing up. But then I was in middle school. I was on the Homestuck train. But it's like, and then over time, and then I found my niche, which was like, I got really into like Ghost World and like kind of like more crusty comics when it comes to like design scene. But I think like over time I just realized like there's really no way to make a comic. There's just a billion different ways to do it. And I was like of course, like I think a lot of people in this room, I'm also someone who's like working on a comic. And like, oh my God, like the algorithm just beating my head against it. Cause I'm like, how am I, it's like so daunting. It took me 2 years to actually start and like pick up a pen. Cause I was like, how am I gonna get a comic out there if I can't get my art out there? Like, and then I'm like, I'm not even posting. I'm like oh, but my fans, what fans? I don't post. What are they looking at? But then like recently I've been getting out there more, talking to people like at these kind of events and going to, like the subculture, ATX and stuff like that. And just, I met someone by chance who's like, you know what I miss? I miss Shonen Jump. I miss like reading stuff physically. And his dream was like, well, shout out to Sick Day Comics magazine, yay. But his dream is like to continue to like get back into print. And I know something like through growing up, at least I can only speak for my own like really particular generation. It's like we miss physical media, and I think that's why Y2K is coming back a lot. Because like I miss like holding my stuff. Like I'm a fan of several webtoons, but it's like Scott Pilgrim's never gonna leave my shelf. You know what I mean? And I'm seeing I'm seeing kind of like a flux back when it comes to physical stuff. So I just wanted to get kind of like you guys' opinion and experience when it comes to like independent publishing and printing your own stuff.
So really quick, I know you've worked with other publishers, but when it comes to doing your own stuff, if you haven't published it yet physically, do you want to? Is that a goal? Would that affect things? And if you have, how do you feel about that versus publishing online?
Yes, I make collected print editions of all of my comics. I feel like for webcomics that is a big consideration usually if you're, taking it seriously. You're like, well, do I kickstart this? Do I do like a smaller print run, that sort of thing. So I've had 4 big book Kickstarters to collect different volumes of my webcomics, and I think I might cool it for a minute just to see how expensive that's going to get in the coming years perhaps. But right now I'm really big into itch.io. It's just putting mini comics online, letting people download them and give me however much money they want for it. I don't care. But so I think people always do want print. I think that's always been, people have always wanted print. I don't like to read comics on digitally that much. It hurts my eyes. But I think, it's something to consider if you are thinking about making a webcomic.
Having 2 books published by a big publishing house. I can say that a lot of my work is in libraries and whatnot. A lot of people have written into me saying that they stumbled across my work in libraries. Physical media, while maybe not as large as it once was, it's still very relevant, and I don't think that's going away in any regard.
Just don't overlook the power of zines and just printing stuff off, at work when no one's looking, stealing office supplies, and especially especially think about other genres you might be interested in, gaming is especially big with physical media, like the gaming books or anything else like that. But also I do think keeping open mind to having both options for people, and just again it's a great way to set up a project for yourself and create boundaries and deadlines. So go for it, make a zine.
I haven't published any physical media except for today, because this is my first convention I've ever been to.
Welcome.
So, thank you. So I couldn't tell you how well they do, but I get asked a lot by a lot of people online, do you have a book? Do you have a book? And I find it strange because they're all, you guys know you can read this for free online, but it does have a poll. I mean, I can't deny it. So, even if it's all on there, it's still worth it to have a book. People just crave it.
All right, and fortunately we don't have time for any more questions. However, everybody here has a table, right? So in the main expo upstairs, everybody's got a table. Come ask them questions. I have been hosting panels here for several years now, and it's the first year I have a table, so I'm on a table too. Celebrating the moderator. Anyway, but the point is, I want to thank everybody for coming here, and I want to ask really good questions. We have a really cool crowd here. Can we get a picture together? Yeah. Can you guys come over here? So you guys stay where you're at. If you guys can come here, and we'll just do a selfie. Try it like that. Oh, wow. Okay. Done this? Maybe not. There we go. No? We'll figure it. Give me a second.
All times not to have a selfie stick.
Give me a second. All right, so there we go. Perfect. All right. So try to get everybody as much as we can. Everybody say webcomics. 1, 2, 3. All right. Again. Now everybody make a silly face. All right. Thank you all very much.